From the Caribbean News Desk, the morning edition. Good morning, I'm Denis Chabrol. Hurricane Beryl, a Category 4 storm, barreled down on the Caribbean yesterday, leaving in its wake millions of dollars in losses. Hardest hit were the islands of Carriacou and Petit Martinique, which make up the tri-island nation with Grenada. Grenada's Prime Minister Dickon Mitchell has been receiving a briefing.
We have reports of extensive storm surge. We have reports of extensive loss of roof and damage to buildings. There is no electricity on any of the islands, and communication is also difficult.
Carriacou, a 13-square-mile island, was almost flattened, and almost 1-square-mile island of Petit Martinique, with 900 persons, was badly affected. Beryl lifted off roofs and knocked down the telecommunications tower, effectively cutting off the estimated 10,000 inhabitants of Carriacou from the rest of the world. The Grenadian Prime Minister says emergency accommodation was being made available to displaced residents, and arrangements were being made to purchase emergency supplies from businesses on Carriacou. In St. George's, Grenada's capital, the roof of the police force headquarters and part of the country's main hospital were damaged by the storm. Grenadian journalist Linda Straker was at home when the hurricane passed over her residence. Although the roof of her concrete and wooden home is secure, she said she was afraid.
I had to shed tears because I became so frightened to see the trees around me just falling. My fruit trees have fallen. The internet wire is down. Everything around my immediate area is down. This was one of the most frightening things I've gone through so far, and I just wanted to be over. I wanted to stop.
Similar damage and destruction to roofs and coastal flooding due to storm surges were also reported in St. Vincent as well as the Grenadines. The Category 4 storm struck Tobago, knocking out electricity and phone services in parts of that island. Water supply was turned off to prevent pollution. Journalist Candice Jackson, who travelled to northeast Tobago ahead of the storm, says that island was spared the worst. She witnessed boaters on the coast of that tourism and fishing-dependent island struggling to save their vessels.
Tobago did miss the worst of it. Most of the damages happened to some fishermen who did not heed the warning of taking their vessels out of the water and bringing them to shore beforehand. So there were a few that decided that, the storm was not going to be that bad and left their vessels in. So those fishermen had problems with their vessel, and so in the case of Charlottesville, the villagers came together to help rescue some of the vessels that were being tossed around in those waves, and it was some pretty rough waters.
Flights and the ferry service between Trinidad and Tobago are expected to resume after wind gusts and storm surges ease. International cargo ships were told not to enter the port until they get the green light. Trinidad and Tobago's local government minister Fawaz Al-Rawi says there were reports of structural damage on both islands.
Has already reported on what the information coming out of Tobago looks like, and that there were roof issues and other structures, fallen trees, etc. In Trinidad, I have already identified that we had very low numbers of structural issues in attention, just 1 or 2 roofs that were under pressure with trees fallen, which we've in fact already attended to or are in the process of doing it.
Incumbent leader of Guyana's main opposition People's National Congress Reform, Aubrey Norton, was voted back into office. The returning officer said Mr. Norton won 1,066 votes of the 1,040 votes that were cast for the position of leader. However, the days ahead of the PNC's internal elections, the party had said that there were about 2,000 delegates, but an official party release issued yesterday said there were 1,300 delegates from 218 groups. The PNCR also passed a resolution that Mr. Norton must be its presidential candidate. However, if there must be a change, only Mr. Norton can make that decision. Newly elected leader of the Alliance for Change, Nigel Hughes, had said he would be available to be the opposition's consensus candidate. And across at the Alliance for Change, Mr. Hughes was elected party leader at the weekend. After a landslide victory against his rival Sherrod Duncan, Mr. Hughes told the AFC's National Conference delegates that he was not in a hurry for a coalition with any other political party. The priority, he says, is to revive the AFC.
We are going back to our strongholds and saying to them, we're sorry, we might have failed you. We have looked at our failures, we have corrected our wrongs, and we have come back better and stronger than any ever before.
He says the AFC will diagnose why the coalition lost the 2020 general elections. This has been the Morning Edition from the Caribbean News Desk. You may contact us by phone or WhatsApp on +592 700 9293. Thanks for listening.